Hello everyone. In the previous lecture, we have seen what is a client and a server and how client and server will be communicating with each other using a JSON language as an intermediate, and what will be the context like different HTTP methods like get, post, put and delete, and how the security can be achieved using some authentication and authorization tokens provided using some request headers. Okay. And also we have seen what can be called as a client. There are all these standalone applications and even the terminal. All these applications can be called as a client, and we saw how a particular server architecture is present, like it will have an operating system, web server, and inside that web server there is an app server which is designed in case with a Java servlet or a Spring, and based on that code the request will be processed. Okay, so let's have a use case for one of these continuation to this. Let's say I am want to just get the data of my student from particular college like college. Okay, xyz.com. Okay, https:// so how I can resolve this particular or create a API is like I can have this https:// xyz.com, and I can have the student, and inside that I want to get the student information of 1 2 3 for support. So where exactly we will be storing the student information? Inside the server. Where exactly we will store these particular kind of student information? We normally store it, let's say we stored in some database. Okay, so we have multiple databases like relative databases as well as NoSQL databases. Okay, so let's take, I have MySQL database, and I just stored this particular student information inside a student table. Okay, so what does my table have? My student ID, student name, and let's say course. Okay, so let's say my student ID is some 1 2 3, and it has my name, student name, and course is CSC. Similarly, I will have certain other database entities like some Ajay, and I will give something like IT. Okay, so for suppose I have multiple entries into this particular student table, and I want to retrieve the data of a particular student. Okay, so now this is a simple use case. I am doing it. Okay, this can be the use case in the real time scenarios also, or you can use some other database or some other no SQL databases also. Okay. Hmm. So now, if you just observe this, what is this HTTPS referring to? It refers to a protocol. Okay, because we have seen protocols like HTTPS, HTTP, FTP, all these are the protocols. Okay, now based on this particular website, we already observed with a Google website, google.com website, we said like this particular website will be pointed to some IP address. See, we have already seen this. Okay. So this particular for each and every website, there will be a unique IP address given for that particular region. Okay. Based on the IP address, we or the internet knows that to which server it has to point to. Okay, so for each IP address, there will be a unique server that will be pointing to, so that that particular internet can get the details of the get details from the server and process it and get the result out of it. Okay. So now as this part is being resolved, that means we already went into the server. Okay. So server, we found it, the xyz.com relevant relevant server has been resolved. And now the most important part is this part. So inside the server, we want to know where is this student information, and I want to get the student information of with ID 123. Okay. So now what happens is like inside the server code, app server code, there will be something called a controller, which is going to identify first what is the method. Okay, what is the method that it has to point to? As I want to retrieve the data, it's a get method. Okay, so it will identify. Okay, so this is a get method. And next, it's no, there are multiple get methods. So for suppose if you are just take a particular college like xyz.com, you will have a get method for retrieving the students and also retrieving the teacher's information, or you can retrieve the staff information. Okay, so out of which there are multiple get methods that are present. So controller will know which get method or which method has it to point to. Okay, so it will just know. So controller, what does it do? Controller knows which method in Java has the code to retrieve or fetch the data. Okay, what is our data that we need? We need the student information of 123 ID, student ID, right? So this controller will point that particular method which is going to give the code. Okay, this particular this controller will point to a method which has the Java code related to retrieving the data from the database. Okay, because this is our database, right? So now what happens? What is the method inside this Java, which is a method written in Java or some other programming language? What does the code does this method has? The method will have a code or a logic to first it should establish a connection with the server, right? So not the server, with the DB, right? Establish the connection to the DB, and also it have the code or a logic to query, to pass on the or logic to query for getting the student information with SID as 123. Okay. So controller, I think you might be hearing about MVC model, model view control. So controller is something which is going to identify the method, which is going to give you the results. Okay. So based on that result, what you can retrieve the data and you can send it to the client as a JSON format. response. Okay, JSON format response, you can send it to the client. Okay, so now what happens? Do you know what is the logic for querying a particular MySQL server, a MySQL database? To get a student information, we have a select star from student table. Okay, where the student ID equal to 123. So it will have this logic inside this particular method in Java. Okay. Now we will get the data. Okay. So we will get the data like this. Once this has been queried, we will get the data like this. Okay. And what we should do, it should has to be converted to JSON because this is the common data format that everybody will understand. So it gets converted to JSON and will be given to the client. So how will the JSON look like? It looks like SID. Let's say it will be in the double quotes SID colon and 123 comma and yes name Bhagya and comma. It will be the course, okay, which is CS. And now the closing bracket. This is how a JSON looks like, and you will get the response like this. Okay. Did you get it? How internally this particular API has been resolved? So first it will point to a particular IP address to understand to which server I need to point this request to. So once the server has been found, so it will go to that particular server, and we know there are certain components of a server, and inside this there is a controller which is going to give us what is the exact method that will give you the code for retrieving the student data. Okay, so inside that method it will so first controller will identify that particular method, and inside that method what will be the logic? The logic will be like how you just establish the connection to the database, and how you will query that particular MySQL database to retrieve the student information with SID as 123. So it will have search query inside it. Okay, and you will retrieve the data. Okay, once the data has been retrieved, it will be converted to JSON and it will be served to the client. Client is nothing but we ourselves. It will be served to us. Okay. So all this process, how long it takes for all this process to complete? It takes some milliseconds. It's not, if you're just requesting some data and if it is taking so long, will you just use that particular website? No, right? So the hard code value of any API request and the response time is in milliseconds, and the hard code limit is, as this is a data that is being traveled using a fiber optic cable, it travels in the speed of a light. Okay, so that is how you need to understand. Okay, so and in API terminology we call this as a endpoint. Okay, because this is the one which is going to decide whether you want a student information or a teacher information or a staff information. Okay, so based on that, this URL, based on this particular endpoint, this is called the endpoint, your response is going to be changed. Okay, so now we understood a simple use case which is having some database inside a server. Okay, now what we will do is like we will see one of the demo website. Okay, I will just show you. Let's go to Chrome. There is a website called Open Weather Map API. Okay, so what this particular website does is like it will provide you some APIs which you can use it for a demo purpose or for a practice purpose. So anyone who is starting with the learning of APIs, it is better you just start with some of the open source websites which are going to provide you some APIs and you can practice on them. Okay, so I just chosen this website for you. Okay, so now this what is this open weather map going to provide is like whenever you just give as a part of an API, whenever you just give a city information or longitude or latitude information for a particular city, it is going to get the weather information for that particular city. Okay, that is how it works and it has many. You can just view those APIs inside this. There are multiple API docs also available, which helps you to understand how you can use this API. For suppose this is one of the API call. So it is saying how you need to trigger an API for it to give you the response. Okay. So now before going further, let's understand um, who will just own the weather information. So if for suppose not the weather open weather map, I want to just make my users know the weather for today. Okay. So or weather in some country or a city. Okay. So what I can do I need to just monitor the climatic conditions by myself or do I need to have all the information uh, tracked by myself? Do I need to do that? No, right? Because I will not have that weather information with me. Okay. Who is going to own that weather information and who is the authority who have the weather information? It is the meteorological department who owns the weather information. And I can't just monitor myself the weather information in order to give you the weather information on my website. Okay, so what happens is like internally what I does is like I don't monitor the climatic or the weather information by myself. I only store the data which I got it from the weather website or weather department. Okay. Okay. So what you can understand using for suppose I went to google.com and here I just mentioned climate in Hyderabad and you could see there is a table that is being displayed which is saying temperature, high, low, temperature, rainy seasons in that particular month. It is giving me a very readable format of information when I just typed climate in India. And do you really think this particular data is being tracked every time by the Google itself? Basically, what happens internally is like it is only the Google server is going to store the data. It is not going to met, track the exact information by itself. What it internally happens is like if you just mouse over or drag it, the source here is mentioned as NOAA. Okay, so if you just see this, it is a government website. Okay, which is going to give information about the weather to Google. Okay. So what Google does is like whenever I request any of the climate information, what Google in turn does is like it will call an API which triggers to this particular website and gets the data from this particular website, and it will make that particular JSON data. So whenever you just trigger any API, you will get the data in a JSON format or some XML format, right? So what Google does is like it will just convert it to a readable format and will be giving it to you or serving you the request. That is how internally happens. If I want to make it a point, so I made a request. So I am the client for the Google. Okay. I am the client for the Google and Google is my server. Okay. So this particular Google server, what it does is like internally internally acts as a client. Okay. Acts as a client and triggers an API request to this particular website. Okay. This particular NOAA website, which is a government website. Okay. And for the Google as a client, this NOAA, whatever website which is giving us the climatic information, will be the server. Okay. And it will, based on the API call, it will get the information of that particular climate, and then it will go in the reverse manner. So once the data has been retrieved to the Google website or a Google servers, this Google server will serve to us in a readable format like this. Okay. So that is how internally it works. So we don't need to monitor each and every time the weather information by ourselves. We can just call a API which triggers the request to that particular servers which are going to get the weather information for us. Okay, that is how it works. Okay. So now, not only that, you need to understand it can't provide the information to whomsoever requests it. So internally, this particular server will authorize this particular Google website as an authorized client. Okay, how it authorizes it? It authorizes by just giving some authorization key and a value like pass key as the value, and based on that authorization key it will authorize this Google website as a authorized client for this particular NOAA website, and whenever this Google once get authorized with this particular server can get the data and can serve my request. Okay. So by this, we already discussed something like authentication and the authorization. So like that, it will be providing to the particular authorized clients. Okay. So if I want to just discuss about authentication and authorization once again, authentication is something, it will get the data who you are. Okay. Okay. Who you are. I want to know who you are. Okay. And the authorization is something like I know who you are. Okay. I know who you are. But are you authorized to access this data? Okay. So the analogy for this is like, so in my company website or for suppose this is my company laptop. Okay. So I can just log in into my company laptop as an authenticated user. Okay. But when I talk about authorization, do I have the authorization to just log in as an admin user and download whatever softwares I need? No, right? I am not authorized to download and install whatever softwares I need as an admin user. Only the admin user will have that authorization. Okay. So in the similar way, I am authenticated as an employee, so I can authenticate myself to log in into my particular computer or a company computer, but I am not authorized or have the privileges to log in as a admin, right? So that is how it works. Okay. Now let's go to our demo website. And let's understand. So very first thing, whenever you just go with this particular website, you need to first sign up as a user. Okay. So once you just sign up, you will get a verification mail to your email ID and you need to verify that particular email so that you will be authenticated. Okay. So now after that, once you have signed up, as I already have an account, I will be signing in into this website. Okay, so this is nothing but the authentication that I am just providing it. Okay, so once I got authenticated, there is something called API key that gets generated for your account. Okay, which will be unique to you. Okay, which will be a unique key that will be generated for you. Okay, and no one will have this key. Okay, so this API key is required and it is providing the authorization for you to call any of the APIs mentioned in this particular website. Okay, so now let's go with one of the triggering of one of an API. Okay, like we will understand how an API will be triggered. So if you just observe this, it will give you the current weather data. Okay, so now let's go to the API doc. And here there are multiple ways you can call an API. Like one search condition is you can give latitude and longitude information of your city. And as I said, you need to authorize yourself by providing the API key which you got it from your profile. Okay, and I will just show you a simple one where you can just provide the city name and the app ID and you can get the city weather information. Let's go and yeah, this is the one. Okay, so I will just copy this and I can just trigger on my website itself. Okay, so here I just want to give some city name like for suppose Delhi and I need to provide the API key so that I want to authorize myself as a user of this API. Okay, so I have this API key here. I will just copy it. Okay, now let's go here and I have clicked on enter and here you can see the JSON response. See, and it got some time zone ID and you could see the climate is related to the or the sorry, it's a weather information which is related to city which I mentioned over here. Okay, so you can have test cases like whether the format and everything is well and good. Okay, that is a positive test cases that you can write. Okay, like the response format field and we are expecting is coming in the right format or not. We can just verify that as a positive scenario. And what can be the negative scenario? What if I don't give the app ID, okay, or the app key. What if, let's see, if I don't give the app ID, what will be the response that I get and the status code that I get? I will get unauthorized. Okay, we will see about the status codes, but this is saying that you are not giving the authorization. That means invalid API key, and this is nothing but 401 represents unauthorized. Okay, and for suppose I gave the API key and I got that. And but I'm giving an invalid API key. What happens in that case? Let's see. I gave F over here. Okay. So it is invalid. In that case also it is unauthorized. Okay. So for suppose I am not giving the right city name. I'm not, these are types of negative test cases that you can write for this particular API verification. Okay. So city name I gave Delhi. What if I gave some invalid city name? What is it? It is giving me a status code as 404, which represents not found. Okay, city not found, and the message is city not found because it is the city does not exist. Okay, in the similar way, I can just play with this particular API. What if I just modify this particular endpoint? Okay, let's say 2.6. In that case also it's showing some internal error. Okay, like that you can play with this particular API. Okay, so now let's understand about what exactly is present or passed as a part of this API. Okay, so let's copy and paste it over here. And the very first thing that we could see is HTTPS. Okay, HTTPS will point to the protocol. Okay, so I will also show you one of the protocol which is called WSS. Okay, so what does this WSS mean is it's a WebSocket secure. Normally, what happens for a normal API called request? What happens? The client requests some data from the server and server processes it and gives you the data. That is how it works, right? But in case of in case of WSS, which is a WebSocket secure, what happens is like the two-way communication happens in this case. What is the two-way communication means? It is like push. What happens is like even the client does not request any data, server is pushing data to the client even without a client requesting the data. Okay, that is how the push works. Server is pushing the data without even client requesting for it. So, do you know any of the scenario where this WSS works? The scenario where this WSS works is with the WhatsApp. So do you just send any API or a request to the servers to get you the messages on your or a notifications triggered to your WhatsApp messages? No, right? Server is automatically pushing the data without you just requesting for the data. That means you are server itself is pushing the data. So for suppose if I just show you, let me just have web.whatsapp.com and I will inspect. Okay, let it get downloaded. Let's go to the network tab. Okay, so if you just observe this, I will just give on and I will just show you there will be certain WSS requests also, protocol requests also. Let me just refresh once. WSS colon slash slash. Let's see. As I said, this web.whatsapp.com is something which is having, let's go to the header and you could see WSS as a protocol. So this is one of the example of a WebSocket secure protocol. Okay, because this is not the pull action that is happening. So in the pull action, what happens? You are requesting some data and the server is giving you the data. But in case of push, what happens? Server is going to push you the data without you even requesting that particular data. And that is why you are getting your messages by itself. You are not requesting for any messages or not like the messages that you get, right? Like, okay, that is how it works. Now, what are the other protocols that we have? We can also give FTP over here. What is that? FTP is nothing but file transfer protocol where you can browse some file and you can use it or upload it to a particular website. In that case, you can see FTP protocol. Okay. So now, what is this? From the knowledge of this, you might be understanding what is this? This is nothing but the domain. And as we know, this particular domain will be pointed to some IP address. And based on that IP address, that server will know like based on that IP address, the network or internet will know what server to hit so that I can get the data. Okay. So this is nothing but the domain. Okay. So inside this domain, API will be a subdomain. Okay. And whatever openweathermap.org. Okay. Is a domain. Okay. That is how it works. And what is this? Data slash 2.5 slash weather. This is nothing but the endpoint. Like how we have seen the student slash 123, it is the same thing. It is nothing but the endpoint. Okay, based on that, you will get a response. Okay, this is nothing but the endpoint. Okay, and for which city you want the information for and for what is your email ID? No, sorry, not email ID. What is your app ID for you to get authorized? Okay, that whatever you just mentioned after a question mark is nothing but the query parameter. So this becomes the query parameter. Okay, so this is how a simple API looks like. It will have some protocol, domain, endpoint, as well as a query parameter. Okay. So this is what I want to just discuss as a part of this session. Okay, we will start with a postman from the next sessions. Thank you one and all. Have a nice day.